Chapter 10, Human Resource Management. This chapter explains what human resource management is. We're going to define the term human capital, look at some of the steps in the PROCEED model of employee selection, talk quickly about equal employment opportunity, affirmative action, and managing diversity, and then explain how managers can be more effective interviewers. This chapter also talks about performance appraisal, training programs, and policies for dealing with sexual harassment and alcohol and drug abuse. So, human resource management is typically described as acquiring, retaining, and developing human resources necessary for organizational success. And recently we have begun to talk about human capital, which includes all the current and future participants in the organization who are resources or assets in the organization. So, a general model for human resource management begins with the organizational strategy and structure. The human resource strategy needs to lead into the organizational strategy and structure, and from there the recruiting, performance, and training is all based around what the ultimate organizational goal is. People-centered organizations have been known to be more competitive, and people-centered organizations are those that have these practices listed. In recruitment and selection, we're trying to generate qualified candidates. We're recruiting for diversity. And as everyone knows, networking appears to be the most successful job hunting method. The employee selection process begins with identifying what is the job, what is the job description, what are the competencies or skills needed to do the job, and then drafting the questions that will be asked during the interview. The job analysis and description often come together, and though we're more used to seeing job descriptions, the job description really should come from the job analysis, which is where we identify what are the KSAs, or what is the knowledge, what are the skills, what is the attitude that a person should have in order to perform at a superior level in this specific job. EEO is the Equal Employment Opportunity, and it's basically stating that it's unlawful to discriminate on the basis of race, color, sex, religion, or any other thing you can think of. AAP is the Affirmative Action Program, and this is used when organizations have a low number of these groups that traditionally have been discriminated against, and so they may choose to actively recruit women or minorities, for example. ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act, and this requires employers to make reasonable accommodations for employees with physical or mental disabilities. Anything that's used as a selection tool must be looked over, and typically by legal persons as well, in order to make sure that it's unbiased, that it's valid, and that it meets all the requirements of the acts that we had discussed in the previous slide. So here are some of the types of testing or interview techniques used for interviewing employees. An effective interview is usually the most common and the most successful selection tool. Now, an unstructured interview, one that has not been planned, has a list of possible failures. An effective interview, however, with a structured set of questions that are situational, that refer to the knowledge, that refer to simulations, that ask questions about behaviors. These are usually the most effective tools in selection of candidates. So here are some types of structured or planned interviewed questions. Performance appraisal comes after someone has been hired, and performance appraisal is evaluating the job performance in order to make decisions which may or may not be connected to salary and other benefits. These are some alternative forms of performance appraisal. Training is used to either change or enhance employee performance. In the past few years, we've seen a decline in training because of the economic situation, and so a lot of research in the area of training has gone to try and prove the correlation between training and organizational performance or effectiveness. So let's move on to issues in the workplace. Sexual harassment is any unwanted attention that may create offensive or intimidating work environment. One of the things that characterizes sexual harassment is continuous or repeated, and it's the manager's job then to not only be aware of, to receive complaints, but also to correct. Research has shown that there is not a good correlation between sexual harassment training and sexual harassment issues. So apparently the best thing to do is have a clear policy statement. Do provide training, but know that the training is not sufficient. And most important of all, have a clear and confidential grievance procedure so that any incident can be reported right at the beginning. Drug and alcohol abuse. The legal side of substance abuse is covered by the Vocational Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and any employer with a federal contract over $25,000 must comply with the Federal Drug-Free Workplace Act of 1988. So here's a summary of Chapter 10.